That's we are going to talk about the clinical part of the activities we have, which is really the part on the patients and not the part of drug discovery that is at cellular level and animal models. So let's focus on what we do with humans. So we are going to talk about 4 different projects that are going on now with the foundation. It's clinical care guidelines, the disease concept model, the remote outcome measures, and the drug compassionate use or pre-approval access to drugs. How do I go next? So starting with the clinical care guidelines. So that's a project we started 2 months ago. The goals of the clinical care guidelines is to develop a consensus on evidence-based guidelines for the care and the management of Myhre syndrome. So really the idea is to get all the experts agree on how you should be the care should be managed everywhere in the world, if possible, of course, because you have access to at different level. And the idea is to get the consensus and then publish and disseminate the guidelines so that all patients and caregiver, the patients are kids, and clinician or practitioner are aware of how the management should be and can implement really appropriate standard of care everywhere. So where we are now, we have an ongoing Delphi study. So a Delphi study is, in fact, you gather a panel of experts, you have statements, and you decide what's the percentage of consensus you want to have to adopt a statement. And what we are using is a Likert scale, so from totally disagree to strongly agree. So we have this Delphi study that includes 40 Myhre experts around the world, from Australia to Europe, US, and it includes cardiologists, pulmonologists, neurologists, and psychiatrists, sleep specialists, rheumatologists, growth and neuromuscular skeletal specialists, endocrinologists, ophthalmologists, and physiotherapists. So that's the panel of 40 experts that we have gathered. So the first, whoops, sorry, go back. Oops, how can I go back? Okay, one more. Okay, so the first step is to get a small group of key opinion leaders that are going to write and consider which statement should be in the Delphi study. And we divided the different statements in diagnosis, multidisciplinary aspects, initial management, follow-up management care, associated complications, should be an S at that, and family planning. So this was done. That's done already. So we established the whole document. The second step is to define the criteria and select the panel of experts. So that's also and build the panel. So invite people, convince them to join, and be sure that they have the proper criteria, meaning a certain number of patients under their care and a certain number of years of experience with the disease. So that's done. And the third step is to start the Delphi study, to run the Delphi study. So get a consensus. So we work with a special platform, special software, and it's running now. Up to yesterday evening, we had already, after 3 days of launching the Delphi study, we had already almost half of the experts that answered the questions. So that's good. When the Delphi study, so there are 2 rounds. The first rounds, they vote, then they can comment, then we discuss the comments that the whole expert everywhere in the world are giving us. we introduce the new comment, we generate a new statement, a new document, and again we go through the scoring of the statements. Then when we have a consensus, the last step will be to get in an in-person meeting with all the panelists to have a final agreement and a consensus on the publication also. So that's the really the end goal is to have a publication and disseminate everywhere the publication so that every patient can give that to their practitioner, to their doctors, so that the doctor can really follow exactly what needs to be done. Sorry. So the next project that's we have also, I mean, the same at the same time, but the other project that we have is the remote outcome measures. So I think there is someone who has or I have an echo. Is there someone who's not on mute? Um, could everybody mute their phone? That would be nice. Thank you. Thank you so much. So the other project we are working on is the remote outcome measure. The goal is to select endpoints for clinical trials. So I explained the endpoints in October, but I'm not sure that everybody was there. So the endpoints is something that you are going to measure in human when you are testing a new treatment, and you are going to say, I want to reach a certain percentage of decrease in fibrosis, for example, and that will be the endpoint. And if we reach that percentage, the drug is working. If we don't reach it, the drug is not working. So the selection of endpoints is really important. That's so wait, I'm going to mute. Christiana, could you go and mute everybody? So that's really the selection of the endpoints is really fundamental, and there is big percentage of clinical trials in rare disease that fail because the endpoints were not really tailored and adapted to their disease. There is a tendency to take endpoints that are already validated in other diseases and try to adapt them to your disease. But the best is really to select your own endpoints, because if you measure exactly what's the challenge in your disease, then you will have a real readout of the efficiency of a drug. So that's really what we want to do with there are different ways. You can have the remote outcome measures, so measuring in your everyday life. So that's the endpoints collected on a daily basis. And you have the snapshot of your stage in the disease at the clinic. And both are necessary and both are complementary. And that improves the fact to have both remote outcome measures and at the clinic outcome measures improve really the quality of the clinical trial. So where are we on that project? We have selected wearables that are validated by the FDA, that are used in over 100 clinical trials now. So it's from a company called Empatica, an Italian company, by the way. And the wearable is Embrace Mini. The methodology includes, for the whole remote outcome measure, is not only based on the wearable, it's also based on surveys and peak flow meter. So to go back to a slides I presented in October when I explained the clinical trials, I explained that there are two things that are important in Myhre syndrome. There is the chronic treatment, and we are going to use a composite domain clinical trial concept. And there is the acute life-threatening treatment that we need, which is another type of endpoints that we want. So I'm talking now for the remote outcome measures about the chronic treatment. So it's not, there is no specific focus. It's broad. If you want to have a chronic treatment, you want to address the efficacy across a set of distinct outcome domains. So targeting from gastrointestinal to neurology, everything. That's what we call a broad clinical trial. And instead of focusing on a single endpoint that you would have in oncology, for example, the trial combines multiple domains. And we combine that into a single composite outcome. So I think to be more clear, so that's how it looks. So the domains are that we chose for Myhre syndrome is mobility, skin and joint together, cardiac and respiratory, gastrointestinal, and behavior and cognitive. So we will have on this part of the slides, you have parts that are going to be done in clinic, in clinical settings. You will go there and they are going to measure every 6 months certain criteria that we call outcome measures. And at the same time, that this is remote outcome measures, that's what we call ROM. At the same time, we have the ROMs that are going also to address with different techniques that are also going to have to address all and monitor all the different domains. So how are we going to do that? So I told you that we have wearables and we have also surveys and peak flow. So the wearable we selected is the Embrace Mini. It's not the same as your Apple Watch or something like that. That's really made only for clinical trials. That's made only for clinical outcome measures. You have an accelerometer, you have a gyroscope, you have magnetometer, and for the Embrace Mini, you have a light sensor. And this is in addition to skin temperature, cardiac, respiratory, all the things that you could have also in less clinical driven wearables. So what they are going to measure, they have sensor data with the wearable I just showed you before. So it measures temperature, accelerometer, steps, electrodermal activity, the blood volume, systolic peaks, and gyroscope. And what we are going to take from that is the equivalent of what we call a 6-minute walk test that is usually done in clinical settings and that are used for monitoring mobility, of course, but also cardiac and respiratory. The thing is that with the 6-minute walk test, if you are dealing with pediatric patients, it's difficult if you have a kid of 6 years old or 7 years old to tell him, well, you are going to walk down this corridor for 6 minutes and I'm going to measure the time. Most of them, they start and then after 2 minutes, they start thinking about something else, stopping. So for pediatrics, this clinical test of 6-minute walk test is not ideal. And with the wearable, we can replace that, but measures for every day to see if their mobility is decreased and their also cardiac and respiratory is affected. So you have a whole, I'm not going to go through all of them, but what's important also for us is the gait, that they are going to analyze the gait with that. So that really gives an indication on the mobility and the way the joints can be affected. Sleep, of course, and all the others, the cardiac that I said before. So they generate reports, they work together with all the scientists, and we can really have data that have the quality and the validation to apply to the authority like the FDA or the EMA in Europe. So the device is this one. That's a small device. It's easy to wear even for pediatric. You have an app on your phone, then the information goes to a cloud that is really secured. That is an Empatica cloud, and then you have a care portal where all the scientists can go, and you have all the biomarkers that are available for study. The two other of the remote outcome measures are the peak flow meter that the patient will have at home, and some FDA validated surveys on behavioral, neurology, gastrointestinal that we will also send you. So that's for the remote outcome measure. Do you have any questions? Maybe I can stop. So the other project that I wanted to talk about, now that we have introduced a little bit everyone, and I see that there are many people from Europe, is the disease concept model. So that's a study that we have in collaboration with Mass General Hospital in Boston, but it's including US, Canada, and Europe. And we are really looking for people to participate more. And I think, Christiana, they can go on the website or on Facebook to participate.
Yeah, I think so. Hold on. I'm sorry. I stepped away for 1 second, so I didn't quite catch all of that.
Got you.
No, I needed to plug in my computer. We were going to lose this recording. Um, so I'm sorry. Could you go back just a second? What are you asking about on the website?
Where they can access the disease concept model, how to participate in the disease
Oh,
concept model.
yeah, so right now it is not on the website. We've only posted it on the Myhre Syndrome Foundation Facebook page, but you can find that from our website. I will just say, it may not be relevant for everybody on this call. We're looking for participants from the US, the UK, and Canada, and also
And
folks who have
Europe also.
already gotten, like, have the genomic confirmation. But if you're curious about it, there's more information about what the project is, what it'll be doing, and of course, Armel will go through it now.
But it's also Europe. The important why we said UK is that you need to speak English. So if you are, for example, in Germany, but you speak English, that's totally okay. It's just that we don't have an official translator. So we need people to be able to, since it's based on interview, to be able to interact with the scientist who is going to run the study. So first, I should start with the goal. So it's to understand the challenges and the disease most impacting aspects from the patient and caregiver perspective. So really, it's from your side to explain and describe the disease and how you live it and what are the issues, so that in fact we can select again those endpoints for clinical trial that are really relevant and tailored for Myhre syndrome patients. So in that way, it's another way to really understand what's happening with the syndrome and improve the quality of the clinical trials. Because we don't want to fail a clinical trial because we don't have selected the right endpoints. And not, if the clinical trial has to fail, it's really because the treatment doesn't work and not because we are not measuring the proper things. So this disease concept model is also really fundamental in selecting the right endpoints for the patient. So where we are now, the update is that the principle is that it employs open-ended questions and interview as the primary data source. And we have launched that. But we have now only, as I told you, a few participants, and we'd like to have more people participating in those interviews. So when we have all these results, it's qualitative data that are going to be coded and subsequently analyzed using statistical methods so that we will be able to construct a model, a concept model of the disease and share the characteristic associated with the syndrome, really just for our syndrome, not taking other description of other diseases and trying to use them. So that's really an important project that we have that is complementary with the other project I just talked about before, that is the remote outcome measure. Um, Remote outcome measure, do you have any questions on the remote outcome measures, the things we are going to measure, the data? You tell me if you don't feel comfortable with those, or because it's important that it's based on the patient participation. So if the patients are not willing to participate, we need to know it. We are going to start first with a pilot with 5 patients, and then if we see that it's really relevant, then we'll amplify and go with a bigger number in the study.
I'm sorry, can you repeat what exactly you're going to measure?
So we are going to measure in all the different domains that we want to have in the clinic. So it's going to measure the mobility, cardiac and respiratory. Um, that's the whole remote outcome measure. That's not just the wearable, but between the wearable, the surveys, and the peak flow meter, we are going to measure, in fact, in all the different aspects. So behavioral and cognitive and sleep is going to be done with the wearable. Gastrointestinal is going to be done mainly by surveys. And cardiac and respiratory is going to be done with the peak flow meter and the wearable, the Embrace Mini. And the mobility is with the Embrace Mini. That's really an important part because you can analyze the gait and the number of steps and the speed and the acceleration. So that the acceleration is really fundamental because it's not the number of steps, because you can walk really slowly and with difficulty for a long time. But what's important is the acceleration and the way you move your body. So that's the wearable is going to measure that. So that's the gait that is here mentioned here, and the spatiotemporal gait analysis that is really important. Sleep is going to be measured also, all the vital signs, so cardiac and respiratory, and the body position is also very important because the position of your body in is part of the syndrome, also more for adults than kids. And we might go up to develop something if it works with the 5 people in 5 patients in the pilot. We might be able to develop later also pain measurements with this wearable, but that would take another kind of analysis. So that's the whole remote outcome, is really with 3 things, based on 3 things: the wearable, the Embrace Mini, the peak flow meter, and the surveys. Do you have any questions about the disease concept model? No? Okay.
Mm-mm.
So the last part I wanted to mention is the compassionate use and pre-approval access. So first, I want to really define what is that and what is this project that we spend a good amount of time on. Is the use of experimental drugs that are in clinical trial for other application than Myhre syndrome, that are applied to a single patient. That's what's important. Applied to a single patient who is in life-threatening condition without any other options of treatment. So that's really in cases where you don't have any other options, and then the authority and the company gives access to drugs that have a big potential to save the person. So that's the compassionate use. And what we are working on is to access through a company that was nice enough to give us the drug. So we need an IRB, so the consent from the patients, the ethic board to give the go or no go. And then we need to submit what we call a single IND. So it's a new drug. Usually when you want to do a clinical trial, you apply to the authority, the FDA in the US, but every country has its own authority for an approval. So you explain the protocol, what you are going to do, what you are going to measure before, how you are going to monitor the side effects, and really the whole protocol, like a clinical trial, in fact, but just for one person. And the submission that you do at the FDA or the authority is usually way faster because it's in life-threatening conditions. So it's usually between 2 and 3 weeks compared to clinical trial application that can take months. And the last part, but very important part, is that you need to have the agreement from the company to give you the drug and to give you access to the drug. So that's what we call the letter of acceptance from the company. So we are working on all that now with a certain company and a certain drug for tracheal stenosis with good hope. The drug is a TGF-beta inhibitor. I'm not going to communicate which company we work with. And we are working in collaboration with the clinicians, with the Myhre experts, and the MSF and this company to get that drugs to a patient in the US and a patient in the Netherlands. So we'll see. What we try to do is not just to give one drug to a patient, it's to give this drug to a patient and have all the measurements at the same time that could be used to open a clinical trial on all the patients. So what we do is that we get the drug in what we call the preclinical platform that I'm going to explain just after that. And we measure all the activity of the drug in cellular assays and animal models. And at the same time, we have the opportunity to give it to 1 or 2 patients so that we can start to study all the pros and cons, side effects, efficiency, everything, thanks to that patient, which is also, the fact that the patient accepts is also fantastic and gives a lot to the community. And with all these different aspects, we can build a clinical trial and a case for the authority to open this drug and apply this drug to all patients. So that's really a very important step in the drug discovery, treatment discovery for Myhre syndrome. So I'm going to stop sharing because I would like to show you a presentation that was not for today on the but recent. So okay, let's share again. Where are you, Zoom? Okay, share. So that's the drug starter. I'm going to do a slideshow. It will be easier for you. Slideshow. Okay. So that's the part we were talking about. What we do on the patient side. Now I'm going to try to summarize what we do on the first part to get to a treatment. So the drug discovery. So that's the first slides is really that's a presentation that I give to pharmaceutical company or scientists to convince them to join us and to work with us. So that's the first slide explains that the Myhre syndrome is mainly around fibrosis and stenosis and neurodevelopment. So it's a mix of those. It's developmental, multisystemic, and ultra rare. So you all know that it's a gain of function of SMAD4, and SMAD4 is at the end of the TGF, what we call TGF beta superfamily. So it's a big function. What we did for the preclinical part was since it's so heterogeneous, so multisystemic, that we needed to set priorities. Where are we going to focus and what are we going to work on? So we asked the patients, and from this survey, it appeared that for the patient, the cardiovascular, the respiratory, and the behavioral are really what are the most burden and challenging for the syndrome. So we thought about that. What's the common thing about that? That's fibrosis and stenosis. And even in behavioral, in fact, you have the equivalent of fibrosis in the, I mean, it's not equivalent, but it's very close. It's the what we call glial reactivity. So it's the a kind of immune system plus the support cells in the brain that are going to become really overactive. And so we wanted to focus also on that, on the behavioral part. So the first thing we did is create the tools. So if you want to test molecules and new treatments, you need to have the tools to test them. So we created a preclinical platform, sorry, called NAMS, which means non-animal models. It's not based on mouse cells or rabbit cells. It's based on patient cells. And that's the particularity of our platform, is that we took cells from patient from the blood, not from the skin, or we took cells from the blood. We brought them back at the level of embryonic cells, and then we redeveloped them in different models. And at the end, that's all only cells or organoids. So we still need a whole system. So we still need animal models. And what we did is that we created mice model that are humanized, so that have the human SMAD4 gene in the mouse. We work also on clinical centers and try to standardize the way they are measuring things on patients everywhere, so we can integrate the data. We have a registry, biobanks, and we are doing the clinical trial design. The portfolio we have is actively what kind of treatment we are developing. So we are working on a Fab CAR T. So that's using your own T cells, your immune system, to attack fibrotic cells. So we train your body to attack the bad parts of the other cells in your body, which is the fibrosis and stenosis. That's a technology that has been used for years and years in oncology. It's a technology that comes from cancer patients. You have over 1 million of cancer patients that have been using this technology, and we don't see significant side effects. It's very efficient. So that's a technology that we are adapting to treat Myhre patients and addressing only the fibrosis stenosis. The second biggest project we have is to select small molecules. So small molecules is in fact what the pills that you can take or the injections that you can have. And we are targeting really SMAD4, so where you have a protein that doesn't work really well, that works too much, in fact, and not in the proper way in Myhre syndrome, and we are trying to destabilize this overfunction, so make it work at the same level as it should be. And that's using small molecules, and that's the collaboration with Spain in Barcelona, and also in South Korea. So we have different partners that are going to give us their molecules, and we are going to use our tool that I was talking about before, the preclinical platform, and test those molecules. The third major project we have is gene editing. So we are trying to correct the mistake that is in the gene of SMAD4 in Myhre patient. So that's the gene editing part that we have. So those are the three big projects we have to get a treatment. The other thing we work on is what we call translational research. So it means it's really still research. It's not really yet trying to develop a treatment, but it's trying to understand what's wrong with the disease so that we can apply that in developing new treatments. So what we want to do is what we call target identification. So target identification is really define where we are going to act, what's wrong. So understand first what's wrong and how the SMAD4 is interacting with all the other proteins. Is it interacting more? Is it interacting less? Is it interacting with other protein that it shouldn't be interacting with? So that's a project we have with Emory University, and it's going on really well. And we are starting to identify new targets, and we are now in the validation phase. So we need to confirm everything and study more everything to understand properly. And those new targets are going to then go in the portfolio. I mean, go through the tools in the portfolio and become new projects for developing new treatments. Oops, that's not for you. That's the preclinical platform. So we have patients derived what we call iPSCs. So that's basically stem cells that we created from the blood of the patients, and we reprogram them into microvascular endothelial cells. So that's our cells in the vessels of the brain, in microglial cells that are cells that support the neurons and help in the immunity of the brain. I simplify things, and if there are some scientists, they are going to say, well, that's not exactly, but I would like the patient to understand. And we have assays, so ways to measure fibrosis and the reactivity in the brain. Then we are developing, so those we have, that's done. We are developing organoids. So we want to have a skin model based, sorry, on the patient cells, and blood vessels model. And then in those models, we can really test again the treatments and see at a bigger level, not just cellular level, but a bigger level, is it still working or not? And then if it's working, we go to mice model, so humanized mice model. We have the I500V mutation, and we created the R496C mice. So we are starting to characterize those mice, understand exactly what are the issues in those mice, so that we can select a kind of endpoints as we select in humans. We are going to try to select equivalent endpoints or maybe different endpoints, we don't know yet, in the mice, so that we can measure fibrosis and behavioral aspect of the mice also. And PKPD, I'll explain that in another time. So that's what we do, and I'm going to, so really the idea is that we have research that becomes projects, really treatments, and that we have the tools, the preclinical platform and screening validation. We measure the different type of treatment we are developing in those tools, and then we go to the clinical trial.